They had a very modest, low-key traditional marriage, and all the villagers laughed at them, calling them scum, especially the woman he had once courted. Their marriage became a thing of mockery in a small village called Rivertown. In Rivertown lived a man named Amos. Amos was a simple farmer. He planted crops and cleared people's farms to survive. His family was so poor that even the poor in the village called them poor. He was the only child of Grandma and Grandpa Lee. In his entire lifetime, all Grandpa Lee had achieved was an old bicycle which he still rode. Grandpa Lee was nearly 90 years old but was very strong and smart and still went to the farm. He was a very poor man but always a cheerful old man. He believed his son wouldn't end up poor like him, even though he didn't know how. Some days, Amos would cry looking at their very old house, his parents, and the fact that he couldn't do anything to help their situation at the moment. It killed him the most that he couldn't further his education and had to stop at high school. But Grandpa would encourage him, saying, "You will be a great man someday, son. Just do what you're doing. Don't stain your hands. Let your conscience be pure and keep working hard. One day, it will be your turn to shine." These words kept Amos going. Each time he felt like giving up, he remembered his father's words and felt a sense of hope to continue. "Son, you know there's more hope for a living dog than a dead lion," Grandpa would often say, and he would answer, "Yes, Papa." At the age of 30, Amos wanted a wife, but no one wanted him. All the ladies in the village laughed at him. "Can you even pay my bride price? Even if you worked for a whole year, you would never come close," they would say. Some would call him poor and wretched and mock him, saying, "Will you sell your father's old bicycle to pay my bride price?" He couldn't have a girlfriend because no one wanted to date him. One day, while returning from the farm, he met a very beautiful woman from Green Hill. She was an orphan, didn't have friends, and was also the only child of her late parents. She had nothing but an old sewing machine she had inherited from her late mother. With it, she mended people's clothes to survive and also fed from their small farm. Though Amos was from a poor home, Lena's case was worse than his. They quickly became friends as they had both been isolated. Finally, seeing someone they could talk to was a relief. Amos quickly asked Lena to marry him. "I want to see your relatives," Amos said. "But I don't have any relatives that I know of. It has always been me and my parents before they passed on. I have an elderly couple who lives close to my house. They are like my parents, they've really been encouraging. I'll talk to them to stand for me as my parents," Lena replied. "Oh, that's fine," Amos said. So they had a very low-key traditional marriage, and all the villagers laughed at them, calling them scum, especially the ladies he had asked out. Their marriage became a thing of mockery. People would say, "They can only marry each other, they are perfect. Poverty plus poverty equals abject poverty," and laugh. But Amos and Lena didn't care. They were happy. Whether people called them names, it didn't bother them. What mattered to them was that they were married and happy with each other. They were always together, going to the farm and market together. Some elderly villagers admired their love, but those young women kept humiliating and mocking them. One sunny day, Amos was weeding his farm as usual. He was working very hard when he encountered a strong tree with very deep roots. He tried to pull the tree out while weeding but couldn't. Amos decided to dig around the roots. He dug and dug, but it seemed the roots went deeper and deeper. He was tired, but something inside said to him, "Keep digging." So Amos kept digging. He saw something shining from the roots. He kept digging and found a big, shiny diamond. He quickly covered it with clothes and put it inside his tool bag. Then he pulled out the tree and ran home. Amos ran straight to his father. He showed the diamond to his father. His father's eyes widened in shock and happiness. "Do you know what this is, son?" "It's a diamond," his father said. "But we must not tell anyone. Let it remain within the walls of this house." "Son, do you know what this means? This is a fortune if we sell it." Amos didn't really know the worth of the diamond, but Grandpa Lee did. "Very early tomorrow morning, we are going to the city to see my friend, Mr. Brown, who's a goldsmith. He will help us check if it's a real diamond or not. Mr. Brown is a good man, and he won't cheat us." That night, Grandpa called Mr. Brown and explained everything to him, and they arranged to meet the next day. Early the next morning, Amos and his father set out for the city. When Mr. Brown saw the diamond, he screamed, "This is worth billions." They all screamed in excitement. Mr. Brown said, "I know a very rich man who's into buying and selling pure gold, diamonds, and all manner of precious stones. He'll buy it." That night, Amos and Grandpa Lee stayed at Mr. Brown's house. They spent the night discussing and making plans. They were very excited. The next day, they went to the rich man's house. The rich man was very happy when he saw the diamond. He knew it was a real one, and so he bought the diamond quickly and paid them a huge amount of money. Amos and his family became wealthy in one day. With the help of Mr. Brown, they bought a beautiful house in the city. Amos went back to the village to bring his wife and mother to their new home in the city. Lena was sent to a big fashion school in the city. After 1 year and 6 months, she graduated as the best student and started her own fashion house. Many apprentices came to learn from her. Amos also started a furniture business. He had always loved the furniture business, but he never had the money to start it. Now he was very successful at it. One day, Amos's father said to him, "My son, we are old and not used to the city life. We want to go back to our village and live in our house. That's where we belong, and that's where we want to be buried. You and your wife can stay in the city, but please, when we join our ancestors, don't abandon the village. Visit the house with your children. Don't isolate it." Amos replied, "I've heard you, Papa, but you're not going back to that old house. Give me 3 months so we can transform the house." The building started, and the villagers were surprised. Nobody knew what was happening. In 3 months, Amos built a beautiful mansion in the village for his parents. When they arrived in the village, they came in a very beautiful jeep. The entire village was in awe. The maidens who had mocked Amos shouted in shock and regret, "Chai, it's not good to write anybody off," they said. "God can change anybody." Amos and his wife spent a week with his parents in the village before returning to the city. They took good care of Grandpa and Grandma, sending them a weekly allowance. His parents never worked again and lived happily. 5 years later, they died peacefully at a good old age. As they had promised, Amos and his family visited the village every year, especially during Christmas. They employed someone to take care of the house in the village, and so they lived. The moral of the story is, never write anybody off. As long as there's life, there's hope. You didn't create any man, so you can't make him. God created the entire universe in 6 days. He doesn't need 10 years to bless a man. He can lift a man up when you least expect it. You can sleep a poor man today and wake up a rich man tomorrow.